Morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with me today and spending a piece out of your Thursday with me. I'm very happy to spend the next 45 minutes together with you. Our topic for today is the delegation you were never taught, or how I put it on LinkedIn, strategic delegation for senior leaders. Now, many of you might have seen this topic and might have thought, delegation, that's such an old topic. I've already heard about delegation so much. And yes, I'm sure you have, especially when you're a senior leader. However, delegation is still one of the main topics that I keep hearing about whenever I'm coaching senior leaders. And there are multiple reasons for why delegation still keeps coming up. And so we're going to take a closer look into this topic of delegation today. And ultimately, my goal for you today is just to get a fresh perspective on it and to start rethinking how you can strategically delegate by allowing some self-awareness and some understanding of your own energy levels and, of course, your cultural intelligence into this entire mix of how to delegate, when to delegate, and who to delegate to. So let's get started. The paradox here really is that ultimately, probably everyone in this room here today has been trained on delegation, has been taught about delegation, probably even has studied delegation in one form or the other in any courses, probably even during your study programs. You've learned specific frameworks, you've heard about matrices, you know about the different levels of authority. You most likely also have learned about how to communicate and what the ultimate goal of delegation is and how you can use it to build your successors, which is, of course, another extremely important area for you being senior leaders. What's interesting really is that most senior leaders rate themselves as better delegators than their teams would rate them. Now I'll pause here for a second. And one question that might be coming up for you is, when did I ask my team the last time how they feel about my delegation to them? How do they receive it? Am I doing well when I'm delegating? How's that entire experience for my team? If you've recently asked them, fantastic. Then you have some good starting points for today. If you haven't asked them recently, well, now you might have a good occasion to do so. And just be curious, because ultimately, of course, delegation can be a key aspect of how you lead. And then, of course, well, at least my aspiration would be to be as good as delegation as I could be. And that's not just dependent on my goals for my delegation, but it's also dependent on how my team really perceives my delegation. Are they growing from it? Are they developing themselves with the tasks that I'm delegating? Or is it probably just, another thing for them to put onto their very, very long to-do list? Now, the last piece here of the paradox about delegation really is that few leaders change their delegation behavior after this training that most of you might have gone through. The problem is, as with, and I think this is true for all of us, most trainings that we're attending, most leadership books that we're reading, most podcasts that we are listening to, we're hearing something, we're reading something, and we're thinking, oh, wow, this is great. I am going to implement this. This is going to change a lot for me. And then we're going back into the office, or we're arriving at the office, and we don't change. We're not doing what we just thought was a great idea. Why? Well, as usual, because we are such creatures of habits, right? Because we are arriving in the office, we are starting our routines, we're doing things the way that they are working for us. Making a change is very, very difficult. And that includes delegation as well, especially when we think of box number 2, which is that many leaders might be thinking, my delegation is working all right, so why make any changes? Ultimately, you might have heard that saying, never change a running system. But this is what we're here to do today, at least when it comes to your delegation. Let's take a look at how and where you can make a few tweaks to the way how you delegate. When we want to make some changes, let's recall first what, most likely, we will all have learned about delegation. The first thing, of course, when you want to delegate, make sure that you're delegating the right task to the right person. That also means know your team well, right? If I don't know the capabilities of my team, if I don't know who is good at what, then I'm not really able to match the tasks to the right person. Same goes for development goal. So, number one rule of delegation that we've all learned, match the task to the person. The second one is delegate outcomes, not tasks. You might have heard about this one as well. Ultimately, the question is, what is the goal of this task? What do we want to get out of it? What can you, who you receive this task, get out of this? What can you learn? How can you sharpen your skills? What's in it for you to that end, right? Leave the how to them. So let them decide how they want to solve this task, how they want to achieve this outcome, because this is probably the strongest lever you have in delegation, right? If you take out the time to explain to them how exactly to do it, you might as well do it yourself. Plus, the question is, maybe when I am delegating this to someone and I already have in mind what the outcome should look like, they might have a different understanding of the best outcome and they might surprise me. Maybe they have a different way of tackling these tasks, and the way that they are doing it might potentially even be more efficient than my way of approaching it. So these are many reasons of why we should be leaving the how to the people that we delegate to. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Let yourself be surprised and see what comes out of it. Another thing that we most likely all have heard before is setting the level of authority. So, of course, the question also is, what can you do based on number one, matching the task to the person, in terms of autonomy for this person? Would they be capable of solving it all by themselves? Would they be able to decide and then to act without having to come to you and consult you first? Or is this a case where you would like to check in with them after a couple of steps during this task, just to make sure that they actually really understood what this is all about, just to make sure that they're on the right track? And then the last, of course, extremely important for delegation, agree on the follow-up rhythm. So when should they follow up with you? How much time should still be left until the task needs to be delivered, for example? Schedule that with them so that they can prepare themselves for these check-in meetings with you. Don't just walk up to their desk and say, hey, show me what you've done so far. That might work with some, might absolutely not work with others. So worst case, it just creates some friction between you and the employee who has received that task for you. That's not worth the risk. So just schedule that follow-up with them. Also gives you the opportunity to check in and see, okay, is there anything that has changed? Is there anything that I need to communicate to my employee about the specific task that I delegated to them? So this is most likely the playbook that we've all learned when it comes to delegation. There might be a few more things that you've learned about. You might not have learned about all of these in depth, but this is generally what we hear when it comes to delegation. Now, there are a couple of, let's say, patterns that might be showing up for you, potentially also for the people around you. So the first one is that tasks or even projects that you might have delegated might be coming back to you after some time. It might be because your employee comes to you and says, actually, I'm stuck here. I don't know what to do. Can you help me out? And so again, it's up to you to provide some support, help out with the task. Or maybe your employee really says, I am not able to do this. I need to hand this back to you. Maybe because of resource constraints, maybe because they don't have enough time. Maybe there is something else that has been handed to them that has more priority than the task that you gave to them. So tasks might be coming back to you. And the question is, do you let those tasks stay with you? Will you end up solving these tasks after all, after you have already delegated them, but now they're back in your hands? The second trap might be the speed trap. And this is one, in all honesty with you, that was my biggest, should I call it challenge, when I had my HR team, because there were so many things where I thought, okay, I would be delegating this to someone so that they can grow through this task and they can develop themselves. But ultimately, by the time that I have already explained to them what they need to do, by the time that I have made very clear what my expectations are, by the time that I have told them what are other stakeholders' expectations on this task, I could probably just have solved it myself. So I'm keeping these tasks for myself because I'm thinking, okay, you know what? It's just going to be a lot more efficient if I do it. Also, when I do it, I don't have to review it. I potentially don't have to correct it. It's so much easier if I just do it myself. But imagine if you have tasks like these, not just one or two, but dozens of them, and how much time you end up working on tasks that you wouldn't have to do. So this is the so-called speed trap. The next one is the cloning bias. This is also one of my favorites. So ultimately, we've heard this about recruiting as well, right? Many leaders are looking to recruit new team members that are very much like them. Let's assume that I am good at problem solving, I am very organized, and I love to be at work very early in the day, rather than coming a bit later and staying longer in the office. Who I would be looking for in my team would be someone who also comes early in the morning. I would be looking for someone who's also very organized. I would be looking for someone who's also a good problem solver. And there are multiple problems with these. And the first problem, very straightforward, is simply that it doesn't help the capabilities in my team if I'm cloning someone or if I'm cloning myself. Ideally, what we're all benefiting from the most is having diversity in our team. We want to see people with different schools of thought. We want to see people with different approaches to tasks. Imagine that we only have people in our team who are very logical thinkers, but not at all creative. That potentially doesn't help our team in the long run at all. Because, of course, we have people who are great at problem solving, but we also need people who can come up with new ideas, with new solutions, who can continuously improve the way how we are doing things, who can help the business in its growth by suggesting new things that we haven't even considered. And it's the same thing with delegation. If you look at it that way, if you're only delegating to people who work like you, well, of course, you're most likely going to get the output you're looking for because you know very well how these people are going to approach that task, how they're going to work on it. Okay, that's great. But it also limits the outcomes that you are achieving or receiving in this case, because you've delegated it. The same thing. If I would be looking at a task and I would have my way of how to approach it, I might not see all the other possibilities of how this task could potentially be solved. I wouldn't be able to see all of the other potential outcomes. Then it's extremely likely, if we're honest with ourselves, that other people's approaches and other people's ways of solving that task might be much more beneficial to the situation than my way. So by delegating to someone who is not like you, or by delegating to someone who you are not used to working with for a long time, and you cannot predict how they would be solving this task, can bring a lot of advantages, because they might really give you a fresh perspective. They might teach you something new. They might give you a new understanding of how to approach specific things. Of course, only as long as you are open enough for doing this. But ultimately, especially now also when we're looking at workplaces and how many different generations are coming together, you can only benefit from really using that diversity that you might be having in your team. One other trap that many leaders might be falling into is this so-called task-only delegation, which means that you're really delegating a task only. So it might be a little box, if you will, that you are delegating to your employee. It's extremely straightforward. It is literally just another tick on their checklist, but it's nothing that helps them to develop themselves. It's nothing that helps them to think outside of the box. It's nothing that helps them to grow. So here is another opportunity that you really have. Consider how often you really only delegate tasks. And think about it the other way around as well. It's not just for the sake of your employee that you're taking away that opportunity for them to develop and grow themselves. But ultimately, you could also allow yourself to hand over something that's bigger to your team and see what are they making of it. At the same time, it allows you to have a lot more free time. Delegating a huge chunk, potentially even a project, allows you to really take a fresh look at what all else you need to do. It gives you that time that so many senior leaders urgently need for strategic thinking, for taking a step back and reflecting on how things are really going. So rather than just delegating tasks, only the small bits and pieces, take a leap of faith and delegate something that's bigger and see what's coming out of that. The change in the dynamics in your team might really surprise you when you do that. All right. So then we have what is called the snatchback, which is an interesting one. So reclaiming ownership at the first wobble is something that might be sounding familiar to you as well, meaning you are, let's say, task-only delegation. We now delegated a prick project. And the first check-in that you have scheduled with your team or with that particular employee to check on the progress that they've made doesn't go well at all. Maybe the results that you're seeing are not what you wanted to see. Maybe it creates some doubt in you that they would be able to finish this successfully. So you might then be saying, okay, maybe this was a bit premature, maybe you're not ready to do it, and you're taking it back. Maybe this is now going to land back with you. So ultimately, what the team is learning from this is, first of all, they might not deserve your trust, is what they might take away. The second one is that, okay, they have made something, or they've made a mistake, they did something wrong, or they didn't live up to your expectations, but there's no second chance. So they might not want to experiment again. They might not want to offer you a new perspective again, because they will say, okay, this is not what's welcome here. And of course, with this, delegation is not going very well. They might be, I don't want to use the word because it's a bit strong, intimidated the next time you come around with a task for delegation, because they might be afraid they're not going to meet your expectations. And because we do not want to be leaders who fall into these 5 traps, today is the day to look into a few other things that you can do. And this is by not just following the playbook that we've been going through, but by looking into 3 other extremely important aspects. And the first one is, you won't be surprised if you've known me for a while, your brain, your energy, and then your worldview. These 3 are aspects that are not often included into any classic delegation training, and this is why they are part of today's webinar. So the first one about your brain really is, how does your brain perceive the entire process of delegation? For many, delegation registers as a threat. Why? Because you are giving up control. By delegating something, you are handing it over to someone, not knowing what they're going to make of it, not knowing if the outcome is going to be satisfactory, not knowing if they are going to deliver the outcome on time. So you are handing over control. And this might have a direct impact on your status. So imagine that there is an important task that's part of a bigger project, and this bigger project has been handed specifically to you and your team because of your status, because of the reputation that you have, because of the expectations that people have towards you and your team. Now, when you're handing this over, you might be afraid that if the outcome isn't the way that you're expecting it, or you might be missing the deadline, this is going to damage your reputation. It's going to damage your status in the organization. Maybe after that one experience, if things don't go well, people will not give you projects like this again. Or if you keep thinking about it, maybe you might be afraid that this is going to endanger your next promotion. So these are all thoughts that might be coming up for you in a whirlwind that will lead you to decide not to delegate this specific task or this specific project. And then the last one that I've mentioned to you earlier, which is also something that I fell prey to, is the effort illusion, really. So explaining feels harder than doing it yourself, right? So we might be thinking, okay, well, now I have to sit down and I have to explain in detail what needs to be done. What is my expectation? By when does this have to be done? Do they have any questions? I need to listen to the questions. I need to answer the questions, and so on and so forth. So I might be thinking, I'm going to save myself from all of this hassle. And again, I'm going to do this myself. So for all of you here today, really, the question is, what if this sounds familiar? Most likely, it's going to be the loss of control and the certainty about the outcome. To be very frank with you, what I have experienced as well is that one of the main reasons for the loss of control and the loss of certainty to come up is a lack of trust. You need to be in a position where you entirely trust your team members. Not necessarily about them being able to do it perfectly, or them being able to understand at the very first time what you've explained to them and what you expected. But trusting them in a sense that you know that they will do their best and that they will come to you if they have any questions, that they will not just start guessing around and wasting everybody's time. But that you know when you give it to them, it's in capable hands. And they will do everything that's necessary to fulfill that task. Building trust like this is, for most people, something that needs time. You're unlikely to hire someone unless you've already known them before, and they're starting on their first day, and you would immediately 100% trust them. You need time to spend with this person to understand what's their way of working, how are they thinking, what is their perspective, how they are approaching tasks, how willing are they to ask for help and support, how stubborn are they, for example. So this is important. If you think back for a moment and you are going through your team members, then ask yourself, well, how well do I really know the people who I work with? Do I know what's their standard procedure, for example, their way of working? Do I know how willingly they are asking their colleagues for support or me for support? Do I know what frustrates them? Do I know what it takes for them to be at their limits? We've talked about this in a previous webinar, in case you've attended that one. It was on situational leadership. And situational leadership, just like delegation, is very much dependent on you knowing very well, who is the person in front of me? Who are they? How are they working? And what needs to happen for me to trust them, but also for them to trust me? Because as always, right, it's a two-way street. It's not just for me to be able to trust them, but they also need to be able to trust me so that they come to me and they would honestly say, okay, I'm sorry, but I've hit a wall here. I don't know what to do next. Or in all honesty, I have been going through the numbers that you suggested, and I believe that this needs to be redone. I believe we need to take a fresh look at this. This is also called psychological safety. In my honest opinion, that's a key aspect for successful delegation, that you have created an environment of psychological safety within your department, within your team, so that people dare to come to you and to tell you whether they are stuck somewhere, whether they need help, but also when they have seen something that is not correct. Maybe there was a mistake in the data you gave them. Maybe this entire task by now is not necessary the way that you have delegated it, and it needs to be reviewed. It needs to be redefined. People will only do this and come up to you and share this with you when they feel psychologically safe. When they know, okay, I can share my opinion and I can say, okay, this is not right. And there won't be any negative consequences for me. I'll be fine. So what's the status of psychological safety in your team? Is another question that you can ask yourself here. Also, when it comes to our brains, ask yourself which biases might be at play when you're looking at your team members. What are specific potential blind spots that you're having? What are specific prejudices you might be having about your team members? And how do these perceptions, these judgments that we are holding, impact how we are delegating? Maybe there are biases at play that stop us from delegating. Maybe there are specific thoughts that tell us, no. We've tried this before, it's not going to work. Who says that it's not going to work just because we tried it once before, for example? So have an honest conversation with yourself and ask yourself, when I am about to delegate, what are the narratives that I'm having in my mind? What is impacting my decision around who to delegate to and what to delegate? And that takes me to the next one, the energy that you're delegating from. Let's imagine that you are delegating because you're almost burned out. That might sound familiar as well. I know so many leaders who are really struggling to get everything done that they have on their extremely long to-do list. And what happens in most cases is that they are sitting down, they are thinking, okay, now I have 30 minutes before my next meeting. I'm just quickly going to work on something. And somebody comes in unannounced and shares another extremely important task that needs to be worked on. There is no time. There are too many tasks. And so the logical consequence is things need to be delegated. But they are not being delegated because you might be seeing an opportunity for your team members to develop themselves, to grow in a specific area. But in this scenario, you are delegating because you need to preserve your own energy. You need to make sure that you have time to work on all the other things that are on your plate. So now, imagine you are giving this to your team member, and it's coming from a place of exhaustion. It's coming from a place of, oh, I don't have a choice. I have to delegate this. There's no other way. Imagine how this is being received by the employee. Of course, they will be taking the task. Of course, they will be working on it. But what is their energy level like? What is their motivation like? When they are receiving a task from you that comes from depletion, rather than from the intent of giving them something that they can grow with. The outcome, of course, is then compliance at best, but potentially that you will have employees who will be thinking they are just your, and I'm sorry for this word, your minions. They are just here to work on those tasks that you don't have the time for. So this is delegation from depletion. Whereas on the other hand, we always have the option to delegate from purpose, right? So this is where you're looking at all your tasks. And knowing your team members very well, this will be a lot easier. You're then selecting tasks, okay, this is something that I can delegate. And this is the perfect person for this because they already have the foundations for this task, but They will develop themselves further if I give them this with a specific expectation, whilst they know that they can ask for support and help anytime they need to. So this is also then framed not as I'm giving this to you because I don't have time for it, but it's framed as I'm giving this to you because I believe that you're the perfect person to solve this task. And I believe that you will benefit from this because it gives you an opportunity to learn something new or to sharpen your skill. Or potentially, it could be a task that allows them to work with people from other teams, right? There are so many different perspectives you can take. Imagine you have a task at hand and you're realizing, oh, this task is actually one that could be solved not just by my team, but it could be solved with the help and perspective of another team. We can strengthen cross-team collaboration. We can have an impact on dissolving the silos that we have in this organization. Yes, I know that sounds big, but this is how it starts, right? Delegating a task with a strategic intention is another perspective of how you can look at delegation strategically. How can you delegate it with an even bigger purpose outside of your team? How can delegation of this into your team and potentially then another team have a positive impact on the overall dynamic between these teams? So I'm giving you a lot of different ideas here, how you can look at delegation rather than just getting rid of a task because you're in low energy, which is absolutely understandable, given the dynamic in organizations at the moment, specifically those organizations that are, for example, in transformations. And so many organizations here, especially in this geography, are in digital transformation right now, have been going through mergers and acquisitions, are going international. So many transformations are happening. And then, of course, that can become overwhelming. But the beauty is there's always an opportunity in everything. Many of you might know that I'm an absolute advocate of the growth mindset, and you can find the growth mindset in a simple activity such as delegation as well. So when you're delegating from purpose, the outcome is ownership, the outcome is growth, the outcome is that people will enjoy working with you. They will become more loyal because they know, hey, working in this team really gives me so much. And of course, you will have your time back. And then our last lens, the third lens to look at, is delegation as something that requires cultural intelligence. Well, I am taking the liberty to assume that most of you will be working in intercultural teams. It's very likely that your team doesn't just include one nationality, but rather multiple nationalities. And this is where cultural intelligence is definitely something that enriches your leadership style. So the first one to look at really is being chosen for delegation, being chosen for delivering a specific project or taking over a task is something that puts people in the spotlight, in the forefront. If not just in the team, then potentially in the entire department. So this is where some sensitivity around how that is being perceived in different nationality, in different cultures, is definitely beneficial for how you are being perceived as a leader. Meaning, there are cultures where people absolutely love being put on the spotlight. Germans, for example, love being in the spotlight, receiving honoraries, whatever that would be, being seen as someone who has accomplished something. It's the same for most Western cultures. When you look into Asian cultures, many of them don't want to be put in the spotlight. It's also here, many Arab women don't want to be put in the spotlight. Of course, everyone loves recognition. But the question is, how is this recognition being delivered? If you are doing this openly and you are giving a task to someone who is coming from a culture where being in the spotlight is not very welcome, you might damage the trust with this person. So just be aware of how you want to delegate as well. Be aware of how many people you want to be aware of, who you delegate it to, for example. And then for the last piece of this delegation process, let's assume that this is a presentation that needs to be created. Just ask yourself, who should be presenting this? Should it be the person who created it? Should it be somebody else? What is the person comfortable with? In general, to be honest with you, if you are not very confident about the specific needs and preferences of any culture, go into a very open conversation and just ask your team member. I'm planning on giving you this task, and it would entail A, B, and C. What would be your preference to handle this, for example? And then you'll know. People always appreciate when you're asking them for their opinion. So go into an open conversation and just ask them, what is your preference? The next piece here, of course, is extremely important. This is the understanding of hierarchy in different cultures. Ultimately, you have cultures where people are naturally following authority. So they would be doing everything you say simply because you are in that position of power. Again, oftentimes that's the case in Asian cultures. You have other cultures where a title doesn't necessarily mean anything. So it could be that you have somebody walk up to you and they are aware that you are, let's say, the director, the head of, the general manager, but they might not respect that enough. So they might still walk up to you and say, no, I don't think this is a good idea at all. Or no, I'm not willing to do this. There is the option or the choice to feel offended in situations like this, which is a very common reaction. And there is another choice, which would be curious. Be curious about what was that reaction about, for example. And again, you can just very honestly share your own perspective and you can say, thank you for this question. To be very honest with you, I'm a bit surprised by your reaction, and here is why. Situational leadership, as it is in this situation, always entails curiosity and open-mindedness, understanding what is happening here right now. And how come that what is happening here right now is so different from how I expected the situation to go? All right, there are other situations where these pre-scheduled check-ins, for example, that we talked about earlier, might be seen as intrusive or might be seen as a lack of trust. And frankly speaking, this is not just a cultural thing from the perspective of nationalities, but this is also a cultural matter when it comes to generations. Many Gen Z members in particular would not welcome you to check in with them, especially when it has the taste of micromanagement, because they will feel, well, you gave me that task. I assumed that you would be trusting me, and now you're checking in with me. So you don't trust me, do you? That's oftentimes an opinion that many Gen Z members have. So just be mindful of that as well. What's the right amount of check-in? What's the right communication about staying on track of what your employee is currently doing? Again, when you are delegating a task, go into an open conversation and say, it's important to me to just be aware of how you're doing with the task. For example, also that I know if you need my help so that I'm able to support you. What's the best way for you to keep me informed that makes you comfortable? So your team member might say, I don't need to have actual conversations with you. I'm happy to send you an update email once every 2 weeks, for example, anything like that. But in a conversation like that, you can arrive at something that makes sense for both of you. And at the same time, you keep learning about this generation, you keep learning about that particular culture. So it's a win-win for everyone. And it makes your future delegation a lot easier. So, as you know, I am big fan of reflection questions. So also for delegation, here I have 3 questions for you that you can ask yourself before you delegate. The first one is, what am I afraid will happen when I delegate this task? And then name it. Become aware. What am I afraid will actually happen? And then ask yourself, how realistic is that, for example? Or what can be done that it doesn't happen? What energy am I handing this task over with, right? Is it depletion or is it purpose? And if you're realizing, oh, it's actually depletion, how can you fix that? How can you change the narrative around the delegation of this task so that it's being received the way that your employee will be happy to receive it, will be seeing the opportunity, will be seeing the potential growth that comes with this task, will be motivated to do it, rather than dreading it and thinking, oh God, just yet another item on my long to-do list. And hence the last question, how will this land in their world? Speaking from the cultural perspective, right? How will they be receiving this if I communicate it this way or that way? And if you're not sure, have a conversation with them first. All right. So now we've almost reached the end of our 45 minutes already. This is the overview, the summary of what we've talked about today, right? So what you all came in with already is your playbook. This is what you've learned about delegation in your trainings, potentially in your studies, through leadership books, maybe through podcasts. It's everything that you've known about delegation already. And what we are adding today is your self-awareness, what your brain is doing, what are the biases at play, what are the thoughts that you're having, potential limiting beliefs that you're having when you're delegating, and what is the energy that you're having that impacts how you're deciding what to delegate, who to delegate to, and how to communicate that. And then lastly, the cultural intelligence perspective here. How does it land with the person that I'm delegating this to? And is it landing the way that I intended it to land or not? So keep in mind with this, please, that none of these alone will make you great at delegation, but it's the combination of all of these. You need to know the playbook, need to be self-aware, need to be knowing what your energy is and your motivation here. And please just be mindful of the cultural intelligence aspect here. So these 3 lenses are generally my main pillars for the leadership development program that I have in offer. It's called MAP, which stands for Mindset, Awareness, and Progress. And it comes with 4 different assessments that you can take. The first one is the Hogan assessment, which shows you how you're showing up in stress, how other people are perceiving you when you're not having a good day. The second one is, in fact, about your energetic profile. It shows you how much time per day do you spend in which energy level on average, and how is that serving you? Meaning, how much time do you actually spend in stress, and how much time do you spend in energy levels that allow you to be creative, energy levels that allow you to be compassionate? And when you are seeing this balance, where can you make changes so that your energy is working for you and not against you? The third one is on blind spots. Which blind spots do you have? How do they show up? And how do they impact how you are leading others? And the last one, obviously, is on your cultural profile. So what is your cultural background, and how does it impact the way how you're making decisions? How does it impact the way how you are communicating? How you are perceiving people around you, and how you're perceiving the opportunities that you have in life? So based on these 4 assessments, we are creating more awareness for you, and we will then be able to create realistic goals, do a habit inventory to understand What are you actually doing all day? What's the motivation behind that? Again, how is that serving you? And what habits might be worth letting go of? And which habits might be great to create for you so that you will be able to reach that goal and to become the leader that you want to be. So I can only highly encourage you to take a look at this program. It takes half a year. We meet once a week, and it'd be amazing to see you there. So for any questions that you have around this, please just reach out to me. And for any questions that you have around strategic delegation, feel free to put those into the chat now, and I am more than happy to answer them for you. And we don't seem to have any questions. I'll take that as a good sign. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of you in 2 weeks' time for the next webinar. I will send you messages about this and send you the registration link. And if there are any specific topics you would like me to cover going forward, feel free to send me a message. I'm always happy to read and hear your feedback. So good luck with all of your delegation going forward. I hope you took something valuable away from today. I appreciate that you spent these 45 minutes with me. I wish you a wonderful remaining week. See you all very soon.